Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike T. Nelson. In this podcast, we talk about all things to increase muscle, performance, improve body composition, do all of it within a flexible framework without destroying your health. Today on the podcast, we've got my buddy, Levi Earl, all the way from Finland. And we have a very wide-ranging conversation here. Everything from grip training. So Levi has trained some of the top grip competitors in the world, who I actually got to meet those competitors when I was over there in Finland, competing at one of Arto's grip events in 2019, which was super fun and crazy to see how big of a deal grip strength is in Finland. It was an awesome experience for sure. If you ever get the chance to do it, I'd highly recommend it. We also talk about aerobic training for strength athletes, how to optimize aerobic power and capacity, aerobic-based maintenance, energy systems, and ice hockey for wrestlers. Some also about altitude effects and working on what they over there would call mountain training. I guess here it'd be like a hybrid of like rucking, isolation work. Hard to describe, but we talk about that in the podcast too. And then also why the aerobic system is so important for athletes. And again, these are not necessarily athletes who are wanting to be endurance athletes, which if that's your cup of tea, then by all means, of course, you need to have endurance practice. Just like strength training, you need strength practice. But here we're talking about more strength and power athletes, or for people who are just lifting 2, 3, 4 days a week, like why the aerobic system is also extremely important. So make sure to check out all of Levi's great stuff. We'll put links to his Instagram, his website, and everything else. Awesome work he's doing. Hopefully we will get the chance to visit him in person whenever we get back to Finland again, which not sure when we'll get over there, but we'd like to get over there again at some point. If you are interested in aerobic training, hop on to the newsletter, even if you are a meathead. Go to miketnelson.com. We'll put the link to the newsletter down below here, because starting on August 11th, 2025, we will have the level 2 to the flexible meathead cardio course. We'll start that week. We'll do it again as live training for probably 4 days over 2 weeks. You'll get all the recordings, you'll get all the protocols and everything. So on the level 2 version, this is more on the anaerobic side. This is shorter conditioning, your sprints, your high intensity interval training, a super high intensity interval training. We'll talk about the classic Tabata study and everything you need to know about more of the anaerobic, the very short power output focused type training. And of course, we'll touch a little bit on the aerobic system also. The aerobic system was in the level 1. And the reason it was in level 1 is because you need a very well developed aerobic system to pull off a lot of the anaerobic work that you're going to be doing for repeated reps at high quality. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of people make is they do too much anaerobic work, so short, high intensity work, which has a ton of value to it, but their output is not able to be sustained over weeks and months, and that's actually because of the lack of their aerobic system being developed. So if you're going to do, say, a 30-30, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, for maybe 10 rounds on the rower, which I would say, or an echo bike, I'd say that is very advanced. We see that you want to be able to hold that output for most of that time. There's going to be some degradation, but it should not be a lot. What I see is a lot of people have a massive degradation of sometimes 40-50% from intervals 1 and 2 to interval 8. So you're not training the same thing. And while you might think that looks like it's an anaerobic event, which it totally is, it's actually your aerobic system that is the rate limiter on that. So anyway, if you're interested, go to the newsletter, hop on there, and we'll have all the information coming out. Also, if you're interested in electrolytes, check out our friends at Element down below. And if you're interested in the cognitive support under load and fatigue, Check out our friends Tecton for ketone esters down below. A full disclosure, I do some advisement for them. I am and an ambassador also. So check them out and enjoy this wide-ranging conversation from grip to aerobic to anaerobic conditioning. My good buddy Levi Earl. Hello.
Mike, mate, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Everything's well. Everything's well. From my perspective in sport, is it better to have a higher intensity because you can push with a thinner grip, kind of like more weight, let's say,
Right.
fatter grip? So is it better to sacrifice the intensity for actually the strength? And I was like, that the grip strength or let's say the more what's the words, like muscle activation because you're using a thicker implement. So I was like, I'm always in the belief of it's better to train with a thicker grip implements, and then sometimes when you're wanting to push the intensity up, you can go into a little bit of a thinner grip implement, or for example, a normal barbell. But especially for sport crossover, I much prefer the training, the 80 to 90% of the training done with the thicker implements. I
Yeah.
just see more results with it. So still, most people don't do grip enough. So
Yeah, it's weird to me. Like I train a fair amount of obstacle course racers now, and now it's becoming more of a thing as climbers are starting to do more OCR events and that kind of thing. But back 5 years ago, I just idiot me. I'm like, I just have them all just start doing grip because you're going to get fatigued, and if you miss an implement during it, you're going to get a time penalty. So these are
uh,
not super difficult events, but most people didn't train any grip at all. And it was weird to watch videos of people just missing pretty basic stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, what do you do for grip training? What are you talking about? I'm like, but you're hanging from objects, like you're holding them. What do you? It was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, you should train for this. Oh, okay.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Plus, it also like I work in wrestling mostly, and with
Oh
ice.
yeah.
So it's like those guys they train their grip, like wrestlers more specifically train grip, but also it's you get that same repetitive patterns. So it's mix it up a little bit. Do your extensors, which nobody really ever does, and not barely enough, but barely
No.
enough. Or they have the bands, but like isometrics, you can do flossing with it. You can do so much like even the angles and positions of the arm, it changes the whole contraction. So it's like I'm really grateful that I actually got to spend so much time with Harry and all the grip guys back then because it's the crossover I have for sports is it's phenomenal. It's you really see the wrist function get better, the elbows get better, the shoulder health gets better because just the way of picking up dumbbells for let's say it changes the structure. So no, I really respect all the grip guys. And
Yeah. That was the biggest thing I got from Adam and even from guys like you and other people was train your hand in an extended position, like a plate curl, even some like we talked about with the Iron Mine, the ego loops, and just
yeah,
I don't know how many guys I have now just buy a Saxon bar because the first time you do that, you're like, what the holy hell? Like I could feel soft tissue all the way from my hand all the way up my forearm. What the hell is this?
so here's a good question for you because I know we're going to talk about this topic today, but
Yeah.
what? How have you seen the benefits of having a higher, let's say, aerobic system or VO2 max? What have you seen as a benefit for the grip guys?
The biggest benefit I have seen, and I think some people have a pretty big aerobic base already who don't necessarily train it. But what I've seen is just their ability to recover is just so much better. And
Mhm.
obviously, like you've got some people who, if you do it long enough, like I've never subscribed to this grip is more taxing, so you can't do it as much frequently. I think if you're new, that's probably true, but you could say that about any max lift. But I found over time you can do a lot of volume with it, and the higher my aerobic base is, the more I can come back and do that the next day and the next day. So especially that 24-hour kind of recovery mark, I just find
Mhm.
is much better. And my main limitations now are more soft tissue, where I feel like, okay, I can do the output, but you get that soft tissue soreness that's hard to explain unless you've actually had it. Um, that, at least for me, is more my rate limiter currently, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. Have you seen any correlation with the nervous system to it as well, like for the max lift
Oh yeah,
score?
HRV is way better. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so HRV is typically a lot better, resting heart rate's down, and the drop I'll get in HRV isn't nearly as profound. So if my HRV was lower, it would tend to drop a fair amount, and then I take the next day off, and then I would go again, it would be fine. So there'd be about 48 hours to get back to baseline. Where I've noticed with doing more aerobic stuff, and a lot of times I can shorten that to 24 hours a lot of times. So my baseline is higher and it doesn't drop quite as much. Or if it does, the amount of volume and intensity I can push is a lot higher. So it would take a much longer, more intense session to get that same drop.
Gotcha, gotcha. Do you have many of the grip guys doing it?
It's the obstacle course, the crossover people, it's a pretty easy sell. So obstacle course racing, some CrossFit people, stuff like that, where they do some grip competitions for fun, but it's not like their number one thing.
Yeah,
Um, those people are pretty much bought in. I have a couple other people who their aerobic base was just so horrible. I just said, hey, you got to work on this somewhat. They're bought in now. As much as I love Jed, the Jed Johnsons of the world and the hardcore grip people, I don't even mention it to them. I just don't want to fight that battle. To be perfectly honest. You do
yeah.
you, bro. I'm not getting in the mess of there. If you have a question, I'll happily answer your question, but I'm not trying to go out and preach to the unconverted.
Sometimes it's better to just keep your mouth shut, right, and just let it be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I know recording this, but the funniest, and I love Jed, but the funniest Jed comment was ever. My buddy Brad Nelson was starting to train with the dumbbells and Adam was helping him. So he had the 100, I think a 135 inch and then a 175.
Yeah,
And he was having him do a lot of the plate mates and the two-hand assisted, right? So use your other hand to stop the rotation. So obviously the
okay.
rotation is going to be the rate limiter of it. And
Yeah,
so he's posting these videos and he made really good progress in just like about 6 months. The funniest comment from Jed when he started was, hey man, don't you know this is a one-hand lift? What are you doing? And Brad's trying to explain to him, he's like, I'm doing it as a training tool because I can't quite even pick up the 135 yet, but if I stop the rotation and I tilt it, I can get a lift on it, so it's a progression. And
yeah,
Jed's like, well, I have his book, I'll show you how to do it. And so Brad keeps posting lifts, and he did really good over 6 months. And Jed kept saying the same thing every single time, even though he added like 30 pounds to that lift in 6 months, which is hilarious because anyone else would look back and go, I don't know, man, looks like you've been making some pretty good progress. Maybe I should look at this weird lift you're doing, even though it's not legit, because then he did post a one hand list. He did get the 135. But I thought it's funny how some people just get so stuck in just one mindset they can't see anything beyond that, which is hilarious.
yeah. It's a really interesting sport for sure, and I really like actually the culture of it as well. Like everybody
Oh
in
yeah,
there,
it's great.
it's so super polite.
Oh yeah, everyone's super nice.
It
Yeah.
was like that was the biggest shock for me because like you go to these underground gyms of just okay, where you got in this gym? Oh, we have 478 pieces of grip equipment,
Yeah.
and you're like what? Like a Rolling Thunder? Yeah, we got like this
Yeah.
version. This guy made that. It's 45 different rolling handles, and you're like, okay, interesting. And then everybody's like super polite. You need to lift it like this. We do better like this. Your hand structures like this. So maybe this would be better for you. So it's a really cool, like little niche sport that not many people actually get to spend the time in. I think it's a very small strength based or strongman based niche. But actually, I've seen a lot of the strongmen getting into it nowadays as well, which is really cool. At least it
Yeah.
popularizes the sport. So
Yeah. And even like when we were over there, because we were there for about 10 days. So Arto's like, hey, when you're here, come train with us and train with all the guys. We're like, okay, great. And so I'm expecting like this crazy huge gym, and it's just this small little community center. And you walk in, there's standard equipment, and then they had this little grip corner, which wasn't very big. But then you look on the walls, there's probably three full walls of just grip implements. Like whatever
Yeah.
you want, there's 8 versions of it in this small little tiny ass gym. You're like, holy shit, this is wild.
I remember my first time with the finger killer. Do you remember this one? Finger.
Oh,
Oh, I couldn't feel the tips of my fingers for about
ugh.
4 months.
And you crazy Finnish people are all into like the fin ball and this tiny little things you can barely hold on to and shit.
Well, listen, man, I'm from the UK, so the Finns are just cranking all the way through. So, so they when they showed me all these things, I was like, "You guys are nuts."
That fin ball thing is that was one of the things we had to do in competition. I'm like, this is the stupidest lift ever. But they're like, oh, this is great. I'm like, I don't know. Like, and trying to explain it to someone, you're like, oh, you mean you added 0.5 pounds to your lift? That's a huge PR? Yeah. What are you doing? This makes no sense.
Really difficult though.
Oh, it's super hard. Ridiculously hard.
Very humbling.
Oh, yeah. Because you look at it and you're like, I do what? I jam my thumb under the. And part of it, I think, is just almost a pain tolerance. But then you realize when you go to pick the thing up, like your hand doesn't stay in the position you put it in. You're like, oh, so there's some very weird, highly specific strength to doing these oddball, like little tiny lifts.
Yeah, yeah. I actually found one of the factors that was when we were working with Harry was actually basically how well his nerve roots, like the whole nervous system coming from the spine, all that scar tissue that basically gets formed up through the whole length. That was actually what, like you were saying about your soft tissue stuff. Once we started working on that for Harry, that was like big keys for his results going up. But that was like consistent maintenance because they're lifting so heavy and so often, and usually quite one side dominant. So, but it was really interesting times for sure.
Were you doing like nerve glides and stuff for that, or how do you evaluate it, or what do you do for that?
No, obviously it's structural balance work. You need to
Yep.
make sure there's no compression on the nerves, things like this. Trying to do flossing, then we're doing treatments of the arms, soft tissue work, so things along that nature. And I have some data back then about how strong your extensors need to be compared to some lifts.
Oh,
Which,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was like really cool. I need to go look back at that data. But it's so specific. It's so specific.
Yeah. And that's like my also my pet peeve of people have the little rubber bands to do some extension work. I'm like, yeah, that's a great start if you're probably an office worker. But if you're someone like Harry or Adam or these people who are lifting massive loads with a semi-closed or semi-open hand, like you're not going to do dick by just doing a few extensions. Like it might help, it might get some movement, but there's no load to that. And that's when I realized fingertip push-ups or like the eagle loops where you're wrapping it around the end. So now you've got this huge amount of tension through this part of your hand that's normally closed. Just
Mm.
different things like that, Saxon bar, plate curls. Like you need to load those other positions. I know you've talked about this too. Like you can't just do some 100 reps of something and expect it to transfer. It's not going to do much other than just light movement.
I see it as the same premise as when people start training in the gyms. Yeah, you can go and use some rubber bands and do some bicep curls. You get some results. And having never trained before, of course, you're going to get something. But then there's a difference between are you strong or not. Are you
Yeah.
strong? Like you got like we I sent Harry some designs and we actually made some extensor loading stuff.
Oh,
So
cool.
it was I don't have them on my wall in the gym here, but it's like that because you got to load it. It's like you legitimately have to load it. When he got that world record with the hub,
Hmm.
so we actually created the reverse action for that, so we could
Oh,
load
nice.
sensors. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I always thought if you could get like a ring that's bigger, and so to lift it, you have to do expansion to pick it up instead of
That's what I
contraction.
made. That's what we made.
Okay, cool.
Legitimately what we made. Yeah, yeah. It was. But I think that record still stands because they ended up changing the rules after that.
Mm.
I think he still has the world record for the previous rules, but if you pick it up, you pick it up, right?
Oh, yeah. Hub lifts are one of those things I just never practiced with much. It's on one hand, it's yeah, I'd like to do it with a 45, but on the other hand, oh man, I'm so far away from that. Like the amount of time and effort I have to put into it, I'm just like, I'll do something different.
For my God, was it 46 or 53 or something he had?
I think it was over 50 if I remember right.
It was 53 then. It was a while ago.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
53 kilos. It's like really crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, great course, by the way, that you made. The
Oh,
Meathead.
thank you. Yeah, hopefully it was useful. I tried to go all the way back to, okay, what are the principles people need to know? Like, what is useful for people who are lifting? Because what I realized was probably similar to you've seen is there's like good aerobic courses, but they're all designed for endurance athletes, I think. And there's some stuff for Metcons and CrossFit and High Rocks and that kind of stuff. But there wasn't,
Also for sports as well. Like,
yeah, this sports, you know, have each sport has their own aerobic conditioning, but for just like the general meathead lifter, I was surprised that there wasn't much out there, which I thought was odd.
yeah, the train of thought is obviously quite sporadic, I think, in the industry of does it kill your gains? Does it not kill your gains?
Yeah,
How
interference
to do
effects.
it without losing muscle mass, you know what I mean? So I think, and it's like lift weights faster, get better condition, but it's like you still see it all over the place. And when you're talking to people, it's there. So it was a really good course, I believe, for people to get more understanding on the basic premise of what to do. So I actually I had one very good question for you.
Oh yeah.
Pull it up. Hold on 1 second. Let's be patient. I had this here. So basically, it was like, okay, I lost the question. Where do you see as to get 80% of the results? Where would you see how much you need to do?
Yeah, so it's obviously going to depend on the lifter. If you're a power lifter, you probably don't need a ton of cardio. You might need more than what people think. But what I found over the years is if you standardize it for VO2 max, and that could be from a 2K, 12-minute Cooper run, it could be a metabolic cart, whatever. In my opinion, if you're mid 40s, you're pretty good. So if you're 45 milliliters per kg per minute, that's probably on the high side. I don't think your aerobic system is going to be a rate limiter. If you're the number that I give people who want to be, I want to get as close to max to it, but I'm not an aerobic athlete. I don't want it to be a rate limiter. I'd say 45 to 50. And 50 is probably high, to be honest. Those are people who usually want more longevity, health benefits, that type of thing. If you're a power lifter, you could probably do okay in the low 40s. If you're more of a CrossFit athlete, probably going to be somewhere near 50 or even a little bit above. But I think that mid 40s, you're probably going to get most of the benefits from it with the not a ton of effort. The nice part about training the aerobic system is, at least in my experience, I don't know what you've seen, is it just seems to respond more without as much variety. I shouldn't say variety, but I should say variation. Like you definitely have some freaks who, like my buddy Ryan, who doesn't really do any aerobic training at all, went and rode a 2K the other day just for fun in a competition and got like 628. What the hell? You suck. Like you never probably need to do any aerobic training again. You're more than good. But for people who train it, I just find that you can make progress relatively consistently week to week. And if your aerobic system, let's say, is a rate limiter, let's say you're 30, you train it consistently for 6 months, like you could easily be in the low 40s, easily, maybe even mid 40s. So you take 6 months to 8 months to really hammer it, put it on maintenance, you're probably pretty close to good for a while. And as if max strength is your rate limiter, yeah, you can make progress in 6 to 8 months, but you're usually talking 6 to 8 years if it's a rate limiter. So the good part is yes, it takes dedicated training. Yes, you have to know what you're doing, but I think people can easily make it not their rate limiter within a much shorter time than they could with max strength.
Okay. And
What are your thoughts?
no, I agree that plus 45. I think if they're also lifters who want to look after their longevity, they should be over the plus 50s.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Depends on what type of lifters you want to be. Um, I know in this region, people do the lift and also take care of the longevity much more than, let's say, um, maybe in some types of cultures, but I do prefer that plus 50 for the Gen Pop lifter,
Yeah.
just for longevity basis. So no, I agree. I agree. Like that, for example, when you're talking like efficiency and practicality, like to override like the textbook periodization for it, it's like by the book versus getting 80% of the benefit in 20% of the time. Like how to get that is what I'm like, how to get 80% of the benefit in 20% of the time was like where I'm a little bit going with on this. So how much would you say then would need to be done on a frequent basis if we were to
Mm,
go in that sense?
yeah. What would be like their baseline? What are you thinking? Like, where is their starting point?
Let's say at 40.
40. In my experience, I'd say if you're at 40 and you're trying to hit, let's say 50, in terms of priorities, the first priority I would do would be some VO2 max intervals. So
Mhm.
hit about 100% of VO2 max. You want to be there for 2 to 8 minutes. If your VO2 max is 40 already, you could probably start maybe even at 4 minutes. Do that, rest completely, and then each week I would just add another interval and work up to probably 4 to 6 intervals, depending upon what you read and believe. Probably 15 to 20 minutes of total time at that level. Obviously, you can work up to that just by adding more. Once you hit that, say 20 minutes, then I would actually go back and start compressing the rest periods. So just track how long it takes you to do that, and now see if you can do that same level of work just in a little bit less time, or you can bump your output again. Most
So
people, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so in like basic terms there, you're going from like aerobic power all and over time transferring it into aerobic capacity, right?
Yeah, because you
You're
want to
giving a
hit,
larger.
yep, because you want to hit the output first. And I think that's the biggest mistake people make
Mhm.
is they're like, oh, I read the Norwegian 4x4 method. I have to do 4 minutes with 4 rounds, and I'm going to start here. And I'm like, cool, send me your output. First 4 minutes, pretty good. Second one, eh. Third one, like 50% of the fourth one, they're basically dead. Like, I don't even know why you bothered to even monitor it. So,
Yes.
did they do a lot of work? Yes. Was it very hard? Yes. Are they going to get the maximal adaptation from it? No, because they're not at the intensity that they need. So I'd much rather have people hit the intensity, rest completely, add some more volume over time. And you're absolutely correct. Like you're looking more at probably aerobic power to start. But if you can repeat that effort as you do more work because of fatigue, even if you're letting your heart rate get all the way back down to below 80, you are definitely working more of the aerobic system because you're requesting your body to repeat that amount of effort again. And once you can
Yeah.
do that, I'd say program that at least once a week. You can try doing it twice a week. Some people can get away with that, some people can't. Usually, if you're doing that, you'll probably have to sub out a lifting day, in my experience. But that's going to be like the main thing that's going to get you the farthest. The issue you run into though is at some point you just like lifting, right? If I said, "Hey, I want to increase my deadlift all the time." Great. Well, you should probably do some lower rep work to train that. But you can't go into the gym and do that every day at the output you want. You can't probably hit plus 90% Monday through Friday, right? In theory, that's great, but in
Most people
practice,
try.
you can try, right?
No, most try. Most try. They definitely.
Yeah, but unless your max deadlift is 135 pounds, you're probably just not, it's not going to work so well, right? So then you run into, oh crap, well, what else could I do to still make progress without hitting those intensities? Usually with that, I'll go to some type of what I call cardiac development, which is just simply zone three. It may be as simple as I like the progressive 6 minutes, get on the rower or an air bike in the morning. And at the end of those 6 minutes, you should be at an RPE between an 8 and a 9. Your heart rate should be probably 90% of max, but you're going to see the curve go up and then flatten out. So what you're doing is maybe 2 to 3 minutes of those are probably close to that maximal intensity from VO2 max, but you're not staying there real long, and literally you're just doing it once per day. So I'll have people program that maybe 5 days a week. So you're looking at a 30 minutes extra per week. So not a lot of effort. That usually works pretty good. You can do some cardiac development stuff. Just even 10 to 12 minutes a day at a moderate heart rate is pretty good. I do doing some, if you're using a rower, 500 meters to 1,000 meters before lifting. This is the assumption it's probably not a lower body day and you're probably somewhat trained, and then don't go to max on it. Go like to an RP of a 7 or an 8. I did a RP of a 9.5 the other, like 4 weeks, 3 weeks ago now. Because you start off and I'm like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm like, I'm gonna go for it today. And I hadn't done it in max effort on that in forever. And I'm watching my time. I'm like, hey, I'm like tied with my PR now. I got this. About halfway through, I wanted to die, but I'm like, I kept going. So I got within 2 seconds of my PR. Yeah, my lifting session that day was absolute dog shit. So don't do that. Modify the intensity to an RP of a 7 or an 8. You should be recovered within 3 to 5 minutes, and it shouldn't affect your lifting performance.
Yeah, just to go back what you were saying there at the beginning, it's like the trenches, like we see consistently that producing that quality and that aerobic power system first, developing it over time into more capacity in the aerobic system, it plays so much more benefits.
Oh yeah, by far.
It's so much, it's a completely different like game when you do it in that sense. And it's basic periodization actually for coaching. So, and actually, I'm going to jump on another question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And let me just find this one. So I try to get these questions because I thought these are also like what maybe your listeners might
Oh yeah,
be
that's
interested in
perfect.
as well. So um, I believe many of the listeners for you are somehow involved with some sport. So one of the questions I wanted to bring out was if an athlete has built a solid aerobic base in the off season, how long can they maintain that level through sport alone?
Ooh.
Assuming the sport involves lots of repeat sprint activity, but no traditional cardio.
Yeah. Obviously, it's going to vary. It depends, blah, 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 which is a useless answer. But in my experience, if your volume is high enough with that, you don't need really that much work, right? So if you look at soccer, you're going to have games, or football, sorry for you international people. You're going to have games that are relatively frequent. Assuming you're playing, you're going to be doing a lot of running, that type of thing. So if their volume is high enough, I find you don't need a whole lot of work. If anything, I'll do very minimal zone 3 stuff, maybe a little bit more zone 2, which is really just more for active recovery, getting blood flow, all that kind of stuff. You're not really going to see a big benefit to it. So I would say in my experience, probably not a lot, which is usually why you would front end load it to the end of your off season so that as you're coming into your season or you're coming into your heavier training in the off season, your aerobic system is not the limiter on that. And then as you go into your system and you're depending on what you're playing, usually the last thing you're going to do is more speed, that type of thing. And then you're just going to try to hold as much as you can throughout the season.
So let's play throw a different type of energy system
Yeah.
sport. Because I used to work in football, but the two sports I'm mainly working right now is ice hockey and wrestling.
Oh, nice.
So
Nice.
let's look now at ice hockey.
Oof.
If
So
if we think
go
about
ahead.
it, 20, it's a very short sprint followed by a
Yep.
glide, followed by a change of direction and repeated for around about 15 to 45 seconds.
So what I've seen with that is if they're a lower level high school, maybe low level college, they're
Mhm.
probably mostly lactate based. But I think that's because they're not conditioned as well. I've had a couple of guys, at least in the NHL, lactate test their professional players, and they said their lactate levels are almost zero. So is the thing they're doing classically a lactate based thing? Yes. But I think they're so well conditioned that they're not spinning out a ton of lactate.
Well,
So,
from my experience in working in hockey, the lactate disperses quite quickly, especially because they're sitting on the bench and then coming back off, and
Right.
The recovery
It's
time is
like
so,
hi, and then disappears to
yes.
nothing real fast.
Yeah, so there isn't that much, but the question would be more towards like from the recovery ability, how much they did on the summer for the recovery ability on the in season. How much would you say would be needed to be done to like maintain that, or basically have some development for the in season?
I would say in season, my bias would be just real basic zone three stuff. Probably not a ton. You may want to hit like a high heart rate, I would say, maybe once a week, depending upon what heart rates they're hitting during the games. Just to try to keep that ultra high end. They're probably getting hit so much with the 30 to 40-second window. Like I wouldn't really program anything in there unless they're just not playing that much. And I would do probably mostly zone three, zone two stuff is just recovery. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, quite very similar, very similar. I mean, we've played around at least with the juniors quite heavily about how much they should be doing. We see that for maintaining the training volume that they're doing during the weeks, it maintains it quite high actually. With the adults, like the highest league here is Finland, is called Liga. Um, that might be a different circumstance, obviously, because age comes into a factor as well.
Sure.
So they like it that it's over 60 for the Rio 2
Mm,
Max.
yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, it really does. Obviously, there's a time constraint to develop that up there. If guys aren't there, how much should we actually be taking away from other work that needs to be done to even get
Yeah.
it up to 60? So there's always that issue. But definitely there should be zone two, zone three during the week. The question is how much time should be spent there as well. So obviously you're dictating training loads through the in-season training regiments. Um, then obviously if guys aren't playing, you're going to have to do a little bit more. So it's managing those things. So then the next part to it then would be for wrestling, because wrestling's a different
Mm,
animal, right? So you in USA you have folk style, but freestyle mainly is your main sports for the wrestling. With those wrestling bouts, we have 3 minutes on, 30 seconds rest, 3 minutes on. Finish a match, you got to be back again in 20 to 30 minutes to wrestle again in a competition zone. What would you say would be the main areas of focus looking at the aerobic system for those guys or girls?
yeah, I don't coach a lot of work with a lot of wrestlers to be honest, but my guess would be because they're basically doing such an inverted high output, low rest period, high frequency. In the off season, I would definitely push up their aerobic system pretty darn high. And then in season, I'd be looking at again zone two for a lot of recovery, some zone three stuff, and maybe hitting some. I would still like to hit at least a couple VO2 max intervals per week because they're doing a little bit more intermediate, or I said intermediate, where they're
Mm-hmm.
on, they're off, even during a match, right? You have periods of time where it's super high output, a little bit less, super high output. You're not hitting those sustained levels for a period of time. So I would like them to hit a VO2 max interval or two just to maintain during the week. But that becomes a tricky issue, I would imagine, of just recovery because a handful of wrestlers I've worked with were lower level and they were always beat to shit every day.
I think as your parents take you into wrestling on day one of wrestling, it's welcome to the rest of your life of being beat the shit out of because it
Yeah.
ain't gonna
And they'll do
stop.
anything. They're great. Hey,
Yeah.
Bob, run through that brick wall. All right, here I go.
How many times?
How many times? Twice, coach?
Yeah, but for real, but it's a fantastic sport and the athletes are great. It's really great. So um, I know that in the college in USA, they're doing a heavy amount of matches in a year.
Oh, a lot. Like huge amount of
Heavy,
work.
heavy. But they have the college system out there. It's a really good system to develop the athletes. They are more freestyle based, but in the Greco style, you got that isometric connection. It's like always physical contact is it's consistent. You don't get like that break that you would in the
No
freestyle.
pause.
consistent isometric lactate work. So that's really interesting to work with.
Yeah, we
And
have
I
a lot of
think,
peripheral limitations there too, then, because you have those long isometric contractions on top of everything else.
and one of the parts that I was gonna bring up on this was, have you had much experience yourself with doing mountain training?
You mean rucking and hiking and that kind of stuff?
No, like training athletes in the mountains.
Oh no, I haven't. I've looked at elevation stuff, but I have never done it in reality, to be honest.
Okay, okay. Because one of the obviously there's the science to it. One key factor that I am actually talking about quite frequently to a lot of athletes that I work with is mountain training is a little bit like, to be honest, it's like free doping nowadays because the distractions that you kill from actually training in the mountains. If you go to these old Soviet Union countries, there's nothing. There's legitimately no cell reception, no Wi-Fi. The TV is you are just living and eating and training. That's all you're there for. And that's I think it's going to start to come a little bit more back into just as not from the elevation based stuff, but just from that separation from the world that for 3 weeks we're going that yes, there's some benefits, yada yada yada, but I think the bigger benefit for that type of work up there is going to be the separation from that. There's nothing else to do apart from live, eat, train, sleep. So, um, with your experience in the research of all the elevation based stuff, what do you think would be the key factors to look at?
So I have trained some people for bigger hikes. I'm working with a guy who actually has MS, so he's trying to be the first person with MS to complete like the top, I think, 7 peaks for hiking.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so we've had a couple other people do like 14, 15,000 peaks. And so the two things I think of, so if you look at the literature on altitude training, it's flipped over the years. So now the general thing is if you're going to do it, you're going to train low and sleep high. Because when you're training low, because the partial pressure of oxygen is higher, you can get a much higher quality output. But we still want some of those positive adaptations to elevation, increased EPO, red blood cell mass, etc. So you'll sleep at a higher elevation. Within that, the amount of randomized controlled trials on elevation training, even if you're competing at, let's say, sea level, there isn't really that many because it's hard. You would need a chamber that you'd have to pressurize and change to know when it's a placebo versus not placebo condition. So if you're training at sea level, yeah, the research on it's pretty split. If you're going to compete at elevation or you've got a match in Utah or Mexico City or places that are at elevation, then yeah, 100% you definitely need to prepare for that because you're going to be competing in a low partial pressure environment. In the US, there's actually some data on like the Utah Jazz, Denver Broncos, like teams that play at home at elevation. And I think it was like a 1.4% increased winning percentage at home, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in elite level sport, like that's a massive competitive advantage because other teams have to come in and play in that environment. And they're
Well, people would
probably
spend
not as prepared.
people would spend a lot of money for a 1.4%
Oh
advantage.
yeah. Oh yeah. They said it ended up being like I don't know how many millions of dollars in advantage, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you're an NFL team, like you're probably only playing at elevation once a year. So are you really going to take a whole bunch of time to acclimate to that? Probably not. You're just going to show up and hope you do okay. Um, so I think that's some considerations. And then to your thing about the mountain training, I think a better part of it too is if you look at these environments that those people are going to train in, if you have access to elevation, most of the time you don't have a lot of technology. You're outside, you're in nature, you're doing things you're not used to doing. I just wonder how much of that is an additional benefit. I don't know what it's like there, but in the US, I swear to God, like people like take naps on the pec deck of the machine. Like people are on their phone like 24/7. Like not to change the music, like they're literally I don't know what they're doing between sets, like taking a nap on the bench. It just looks like no one's in main gyms. No one's concentrating on actual training. They're just so distracted. Yeah, so I just wonder about how much just removing all of
But
that and just having one focus like makes such a big difference.
yeah, I mean, that I would actually like to know also how the research was done on the high altitude stuff and where it was done, because we're talking like, well, if you think you go to some mountains in Bulgaria or Armenia, or the difference is that, like, there is no distractions. Like, I've been
Yeah, there's
there.
nothing there.
You see a sheep and you're like, oh, finally something moved. But you're in nature, you get to walk up, you get all that, all your rest days, but you are training. It's not
Hmm.
like messing about. This is one, it's restless, so that's one factor. It's hard training. It's not like you're going there for a Sunday walk.
Yeah,
The
it's
last,
not vacation.
no. Obviously, one of the experiences that we know is obviously the first basically 5 days. It's nothing.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're just gonna get
Because the
torched.
training intensity that you do on a general is so high that you can't do anything basically the first 5 days. So, and that's even from the weightlifting perspective. It's really trying to get your body used to being in that environment up there. And then it's trying to mitigate or trying to adjust the volume that you should be doing so that there's enough recovery between the sessions. But we've seen benefits with athletes going up there, that's for sure. But how much of it is also placebo coming out of that? And then how much is it just like the lack of distractions that you're actually getting a better training output?
Yeah, and you're probably
Just,
going to bed. You're not out at the bars. You don't have other responsibilities. You're there just to sleep, eat, train, repeat.
yes, yes. But it's definitely something which I think, to be honest, I think in today's world we should be doing a little bit more, is trying to get that separation from the technology world, trying
Oh
to get
yeah.
more athletes. So yeah,
Yeah. I'm even old school. Like I still have I think I probably even have it here. Like I still write stuff down in like a training notebook because I want to track stuff, but I don't want to be on my phone the whole time. So in a perfect world, I'll just have a playlist already, put my phone in offline and not look at it again because I think just that constant task switching is, I don't know. I just think it's a negative. Maybe if you're really advanced, you can get around, you can probably do it. But I think for most people, I just think that's a detriment. So the more you can concentrate on one thing is just going to be a benefit.
yeah, yeah. Yes. So let me see if I got another question for you here
Yeah.
then. Here's one crossover for you then. So in a sport like hockey where shifts are short and explosive, do you think altitude training actually benefits repeat sprint ability?
Ooh.
Or are we just saying like an overhyped aerobic crossover from like endurance sports?
I don't know what would be the actual answer. If I were to guess, if you said, hey, you're in charge of NHL training, we'll do whatever you want, your budget's unlimited. I definitely would test it to see if there's an effect. Like the research would say the effect once you come back to sea level will only stay for about 2 weeks because you just don't have that constant stimulus unless you're sleeping in a weird tent or something like that at night. My guess is if I were to guess, I would say probably not going to increase it. But I do wonder about some of the mental benefits of having to train in a low oxygen environment is just very difficult. So maybe that would transfer to better training just from mindset and things like that. But I don't know.
Mm.
What are your thoughts? My guess is I don't think that it would transfer if I had to bet.
Well, I don't know. That's
Yeah, yeah. It's a
never
good question.
experienced it. It's an
Yeah,
experienced it, so you never really. I haven't really had that feedback. I know a lot of athletes now because of the what I've done in wrestling and stuff are interested from the hockey world to actually go up into the
sure.
mountain to test it out. I think the mental side of it would be massive.
Yeah.
One, they're just not used to it, so it'd be like a whole big culture shock of, oh, really, there is nothing to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, see you in 3 weeks. We're going to be there.
Yeah. Goodbye.
But it would be good to test. Obviously, yes, the benefits would be, let's say, reduced over time because you
Yeah.
don't have that consistent stimulus and it's a long season ahead. But um, yeah, it would be interesting to see how much you could actually raise it up and then keep it up after that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. And something like that, like even if you're designing a trial, like my first question is, does the thing work? Like who cares about having a placebo group or anything else? Like of course that would be great. We would love to have that. But even if you just had one group you send to the mountains for 3 weeks, they do whatever training there. You try to match the same training at their gym so volume is equated or whatever. Just see if the other group gets better. My gut feeling is the other group would get better significantly, and at least you would know that the intervention you did is works positive.
Yeah. One reason why I asked that was actually because I was up in the mountains in Georgia where Lasher trains.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, fuck, this is pretty fucking hard. Like, walking up the stairs, I'm like, Jesus Christ, he's moving some weight up here. And it just started to get me thinking, like, well, what about that repeat sprint ability? Like, obviously, he's not competing at that level.
Right.
So, how would that crossover be for other sports in that short term intensity? So,
Yeah. It's interesting. We definitely know that there's positive adaptations due to altitude. There's no question on that. That's been extremely well documented. The issue is, do those positive adaptations transfer to sea level performance? And again, it's probably going to be variable depending upon what's the rate limiter of the athlete, right? If they're peripherally occluding real fast, probably not a big thing. If the red blood cell mass is low and their cardiac system is the rate limiter, so they're more air quotes cardiac limited, maybe it is more beneficial. Maybe you would see more of a benefit to that. Yeah, I don't know. My guess is it's probably per individual, depending upon what the rate limiter is,
yeah, interesting.
which makes it even more hard to figure out.
Yes. Yeah. Because I know that it used to be very popular.
Oh, there used to be a ton of people doing it all the time, and that's what I always look at too. I think, granted, it's anecdotal. Like you used to see one-offs, at least in the strength world, of people going to altitude and doing all this stuff, and then it disappeared. Although, at least in the US, it's coming back again. I know a guy in California is trying to make training areas and gyms that are pressurized to low levels of oxygen to try to increase the amount of effort and these other things. Again, this is more for general population, not necessarily athletes. You've got a lot
Okay.
of the tents, things like that. And you've got the other extreme. Now you've got a lot of hyperbaric oxygen treatment and things on the high oxygen pressure area too. So it's becoming its own thing again, it seems like.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it starts to turn around again. Old school is the best school still.
Yeah, and another thing that you find interesting too is I was talking to Cal Dietz about this, and so from the data I've looked at for hypoxic training at sea level, it's mixed. Like it just looks like it just drops your performance. But he has a system called the Live O2 where you can go from very hypoxic to high levels of oxygen, like very fast. And he sent me some old Russian literature that said that the hypoxic training at sea level didn't really work all that well just because your training output got to be so low, you were actually missing out on positive adaptations. And he said that the training they were doing was actually switching. So they would have people on a system where they would become hypoxic. So they would drop the oxygen amount, not necessarily pressure, would do some exercise. And then the machine, you can hit a button and then it would go hyperoxic. So it would give you high amounts of oxygen immediately after you did the hypoxic. So you would do like these intervals of switching back and forth. And he said with his athletes, his advanced athletes, these were her pros, that he did see some pretty big improvements with that. And there is some old Russian literature showing that you have to preload someone in a hypoxic condition first before the hyperoxic condition is beneficial. And it's the switching back and forth between those two is where you get most of the benefit.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I haven't played around with that much yet.
Chris, if you ever find that, if you ever speak to Cal, try to find me that link for that literature. That would be nice to look at.
Yeah, he sent it to me and I had it open once and I literally tried to find it again the other day. And I said, "Hey, can you send me that link again?" He just sends me a link to his entire library, which trying to search through that thing is like literally impossible. So I'll have to send him another link and ask him again. But If anyone's listening who wants to send me a $6,000 device to test this out, I will gladly test it in my garage once I'm home.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see.
Yeah.
If you're working with, do you ever do much work with weight cutting?
Yes, some. Not a ton, but some for weight class sports and even for physique stuff.
Okay. Let me see if this one, if you're working with weight cutting, let's say weight cutting a wrestler or MMA fighter who also wants to have some aerobic adaptations, um, how would you manage actually like altitude or hypoxic work without trying to add like unnecessary stress, which would basically kill the output? Because obviously in the weight cut,
Hmm.
it's a more extreme circumstance, right? So what what would you do, or how would you do it?
My first question would be, what experience do they have not doing it? So we have a baseline. If anything, I would have them sleep at a lower level of oxygen, see if we can get enough adaptations from that. I'd probably do a blood draw before just to look at red blood cell mass, hematocrit, that kind of stuff. And then I would look at their heart rate variability each morning also, and then some other output measures in their training. Because so what you're trying to balance is they're already on the razor's edge of probably doing too much, and they've got a weight cut, and they've got the stress of the thing. So a weight cut usually means they've got a performance thing coming up. So then they're more worried about that. So I'd be worried that
And
the
they're in
thing you're
altitude.
doing is too big of a stressor. Say again?
And they're in altitude, right? So
Yeah, and they're at altitude. So yeah, I don't know. If they're staying at altitude, so would they be staying at altitude 100% and their competition is at
so
altitude?
yeah, so basically what usually happens is what I see quite a lot, because the last 5 years I've been traveling a lot with wrestling, and
Hmm,
usually they have those pre-competition camps. Some nations, let's say, go to
sure.
mountains, and those nations, obviously, I know I haven't had experience with them, but I'm watching them. I'm studying how each nation is doing certain things. It's not exactly the easiest thing to go and ask them,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
especially if you don't have Russian as your second language. So,
Yeah.
but so anyway, yeah, my question would be like, how would you maintain those like hits, keep up some aerobic adaptations? Because I see these wrestlers cutting weight. They're at high altitude. They're still doing practice.
Uh,
They're still doing
uh,
training. And you're like, okay, I know the risk for
oof.
injury would be like it's astronomical. I know it is. And that's why many athletes get injured before competition.
Yeah. So in that event, you'd have to talk to their other, so I'd definitely be doing some measure of cost. I'd probably be doing HRV, some measurement of that to get some leverage to be like, hey, you're just going down real fast, right? You're going off the ski slope. So I would probably then have to switch some lifting for, I would probably try to do at least some high output aerobic things, some VO2 max intervals. Even if I can only get one or two in a week, I want something at that high output, that intensity first, and then whatever volume I can get, that's what I would target first, because that's going to be the biggest stimulus to try to hold as much of those pure aerobic adaptations as you can. In that situation, your reality is you're probably going to have to barter with the strength coach to try to get some lifting time dedicated to doing that because you can't just probably add it on top of it with everything else. And that sometimes is a very difficult conversation, we'll say. So I'd
Mhm.
want some leverage of testing pre and post and some measure of cost to be like, hey, we did this surrogate test for VO2 max when we came here. It's 4 weeks into this thing. Like you went from 55 to 48, right? I'm making up numbers, right? So we're going down. We're having a high cost associated with all of this stuff. So what are the key attributes you want to maintain? I'd argue aerobic is part of them to try to get them to agree to that. And if they do agree to it, okay, can we get part of the training dedicated to this so that we're not losing all these adaptations right away?
Yeah. Yeah, so
What
as
are
an
your thoughts?
implementation point of view, just thinking as an implementation point of view, obviously, if you're working with those type of those certain type of nations, they don't even have a strength coach. It's the wrestling coaches. So it's usually just going to be tracking yourself, the HRV, and then trying to put somehow that into the session and not having extra sessions, I think would be the key. So less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I found with those situations is if I don't have any data at all, in my personal experience, it's like talking to a wall. It's, I'll just do more, I'll be fine. I was like, do you feel, well, how do you feel? I feel great, coach. You look like shit. What do you tell me? Like, how do you like truly feel? Oh, I'm good. No, don't give me the answer I want to hear. Like, how do you actually? Because again, it's like, let's just run through walls. Let's just try harder. Let's solve everything. And at least if I have some data to say, hey, here's an actual physiologic cost, whether it's HRV, a mega wave, output, vertical jump, I don't care. Give me something so that I can show them that you're not a bad person. I understand you're trying hard. Doesn't mean you're a lesser athlete. You're not a bad human. It's just that there is only so much stress you can tolerate, and this is per everyone. And here's your data, and it's actually going down. So before all the wheels come off and you have a catastrophic injury and you're out for God knows how long, or maybe the rest of your career, let's try to do something now and show them that it's based on their actual data. So trying to remove all their psyche as much as possible out of it, which not always easy.
Also, then you put into circumstance, if they're doing a weight cut, they're probably not even speaking to you anyway. You're the one that put the diet in place.
Oh yeah, then they hate you more if you're the one in charge of the weight cut. They're like, screw you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and I would get that data before they do the weight cut too, because everything's just gonna, it's gonna go off
yeah,
a cliff during a weight cut.
for sure, for sure. Well, that's it for questions for me, mate. Is there anything you want to ask me, or anything you want?
Yeah, like when you're thinking of aerobic training, like what is the framework you look at for just athletes in general? So if you have a wrestler, you have a hockey player, do you put in like their strength work first? Do you do an assessment? Do you do so much? What is your just thought process at a high level for it?
We take obviously the assessments. That's a base. We take a snapshot of where they are today. Usually they're coming off a break. It's quite frequently. It's not as if like they're in season all the time. They're coming off a break. We take an assessment. We analyze the data. We see. I think for me, it's not the be all and end all for performance.
Sure.
And that's what I try to think as a coach is that there are certain factors you need as an athlete, and there are also certain factors which you're missing, like greatly. And if it's kind of which one do you need the most? If this is already up high, yes, that has probably also got you to where you need to be at that level. Is it that we need it even more, or we bring it back down? We need to take something even higher. So it's a little bit like a puzzle. And I think in general, I look over not just the short-term basis as well. I look over year-to-year development.
Yeah.
I'm quite, let's say, well, grateful that I have athletes for long term. It's not just come in for 6 weeks, I never see you again, or 12 weeks. The athletes usually want to work with me year round. So because of that, I'm always playing that game of, well, how much do we take it up with also developing some other factors during the same process? Because, well, sport, we're not just running on a track in circles.
Yeah.
Especially in like for a sport, for example, if you're looking at hockey, you got the battles in the corners you need to prepare for. You've got the turner speed. You got the short distance. There's so many factors that we need to also develop and think about where is it as you as a human, how can we make a better human performance for your skill set and your angles and biomechanics? So I play a lot like that. And that's something which I've had great results with. And I think that's the way coaching should be done, not always just looked on this small spectrum. So, but with the aerobic system, it is obviously clearly very important in sport. It's not just for the longevity. We need it. We need the recovery ability. We need to be able to actually recover from producing force outputs and recover quick. Because it might be like, for example, we just had one guy there in wrestling. He took bronze at European Championships. first time medaled in 5 years. And the thing that we worked on was his base. Like
Mm.
he's wrestling legitimately all the time. And we literally, I said, no, we need to walk. Like we legitimately, I was like, you pro, we need to walk, man. We need to put that heavy rook on you, and we're gonna walk.
Yeah,
He's what the fuck? No, 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 we can do it. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, listen, the key now is that you need to rook, and we did that. And in his last performance, he was like by far in the last 90 seconds of the match was in better shape than the other guys. So
Nice.
it's looking at key points, I think, and then trying to think a little bit outside the box of what we should be doing as well. So, and then obviously, how can we integrate maybe two things at the same time? So actually, I was like, okay, he's got weak VMO. We need to strengthen the quadriceps. So I was like, okay, we're gonna walk, but you're gonna walk up backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
We actually had him rooking up the steep parts backwards, so it's kind of like slide. Yeah, just trying to hit two birds with one stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
One,
yeah, that's great. I
have
love
enough
it.
time in the week to train. So, so that's hopefully answered your question. I got a little bit lost in my own train of thought, but yeah,
Oh, that's great. And then the last question is, my bias is I think the aerobic system is also super beneficial for cognition. So if you can play your sport at a lower heart rate, you
for
will just
sure.
by definition make better decisions.
That's
What do you
that's
think of that, and
100%.
what do you look at for that?
Solidly agree for that.
Yeah.
We see it's a little bit like you can cross-reference it to sleep. You can be like lack of your like aerobic system, poor choices, poor decision making, like lack of recovery. It's like the same references of sleep. I see it as that. If you don't sleep the night before a game, or if you don't have a good like aerobic level output, then you're going to make worse choices in that game. So yeah, I completely 100% agree with you on that. And in high level sports like Olympics, in professionally high paid sports, you can't be sacrificing 2, 3%, 5%.
Oh, no, you're done.
It's two bad moves and you're out the team. You don't have a contract. Or it's in wrestling, it's really brutal. It's one mistake and you're out the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think the cognition for having a high level aerobic status definitely improves the cognition in the actual in the most fragile moments of the game. That's where it's going to show.
Yeah. And that was always my argument too, is that it's going to occur at the time you need it to occur at, whether that's the end of the season, end of the game, end of the quarter. And if you can show that you're just not as affected by fatigue as the other team, whether that's a mental thing of them watching you, also the cognition and the performance. And then this reminds me, I was doing a race across America. I was a volunteer for that. So you start with 4 people riding a bike, start in San Diego in the US. They ride for 7 days, 24 hours a day, end up in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This was years ago.
Your ass must have
Bonkers
been
race.
killing you. Your ass
Oh,
must have been in bits.
it was horrible. Like I was a support person. I wasn't riding, but it was just insane. And so we're in the middle of Nebraska somewhere. And one of our riders, we're in the car behind him. And there's no drafting. So there's a guy, I think it was from Austria in front, and he's bored. He's been riding for 3 days. He's, yeah, I'm gonna just ride up on this guy and pretend to pass him and then not just to fuck with him. We're like, okay, sure, well, whatever. And so he would ride up on him like he was gonna try to pass him, and you would see the other guy like try to beat him because he doesn't want to get passed. And then he would back off, and this goes on for 10 minutes. And we're like, hey, you should just pass him next time. He's okay. And so we're in the car passing him. He's passing the other rider. And you can see the rider he's passing look over and see that he just does not want to get passed. And you see him just trying as hard as he can. And he just got smoked. And then as we rode past him and as our guy rode past him, the look of just utter disappointment on the other rider's face was hilarious. Like his whole posture changed, everything changed. He was just looked absolutely demoralized that our rider rode past him smiling as he's like beating this other guy. And I always
He
think,
took his soul.
yeah, literally. I can't imagine if you're at the end of a game and you're competing against another team and you're both fatigued, and you look across the line or wrestling or hockey or whatever, and that the other team doesn't look like they're fatigued, just the mental onslaught of having to process that, I think, is
Yeah,
highly undervalued.
yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And then in those games, the mental side of it is obviously massive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your time. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find more about me. I have my website, it's leviearl.com. And if you want to check out the company website, it's phioi.com. You can follow me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, add me on Facebook. Feel free to ask me any questions, anybody. Extensive background in sports and in this industry. So feel free to reach out. It's fine for me. And Mike, again, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. Always
Yeah,
is.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for all the feedback and everything. It's always good to see you and chat again too. It's been the last time I saw you in person was Texas. Was that
Yeah,
how many years ago now?
oh, it was
Five?
pre-Rona. It was pre-Rona.
Yeah, so it's got to be at least 6 or 7 now.
And we were speaking over is it Genesis. Yeah. Yes. Good fun. Good fun.
Yeah,
Texas.
that was fun. Cool, man.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, mate. All right. Take care.
You too.
See you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Huge thanks to my buddy Levi. Thank you so much for all the wonderful conversation and just all the support over the years, sharing all your great knowledge you've accumulated with athletes of all types, from several Olympic athletes to grip athletes and many more. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you want more information, make sure to check out all Levi's great stuff. We'll put a link to his website and to his Instagram. If you are ever over near his area, which is just outside of Helsinki, Finland, I highly recommend you check him out in person. That'd be amazing. And if you're interested in aerobic training, and especially the more anaerobic side, you've got the Flexible Meathead Cardio Level 2, the anaerobic conditioning portion. It goes live August 11th, and you'll be able to hop on that via the newsletter, because I don't have a sales letter for it yet. But newsletter will be the best place to get all the information on that. We have a link to it down below. It's free to join. We also give you a cool free gift. So if you're looking for how to do high intensity interval training the correct way, I would highly recommend this course. Of course, I'm biased because I'm the one creating it. But I've used a lot of these methods for, going on probably 15, 20 years now. We found that they have been extremely effective, and we'll explain the theory, we'll give you the protocols, and make sure you are all good to go. Again, this is primarily designed if you are some type of lifting meathead athlete. You may be competing in hockey, American football, rugby, etc. Or you might just be a gym goer who's lifting 3 to 4 days a week and realizes that they need more anaerobic conditioning, which I think is a good thing for everybody. Hop onto the newsletter. We'll get you all the information there. If you're looking for elements, or I should say electrolytes by element, check them out down below. I'm drinking the raspberry today. And then also our friends over at Tecton Ketone Esters. So for the power of ketones, these are ketone esters that taste pretty darn good. You need a ketone ester more so than a ketone salt to increase blood levels of ketones for better performance and especially, in my opinion, cognition. I like using them later in the day if I have a bunch of work I still need to get done, but I don't want anything that is more stimulating to mess with my sleep. I have even tested out drinking 2 cans, which is a 20-gram dose immediately before going to bed. And yeah, if anything, my sleep might have been a little bit better. So for something that doesn't affect your sleep later in the day, highly recommend them. Some people use them pre-training. I also do that. Usually about 20 to 25 grams is what I found is effective dose, so a little bit higher on that. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate it. If you could do us a favor by hitting the old like button and subscribe and download. If you could do us a huge favor, if you're on the old YouTubes, please subscribe to the Flex Diet channel. We're trying to get our number of subscribers up over there in time, even though I know most of you are listening to this podcast via audio. From what I can tell from our stats, probably 95% is audio, but If you could just wander over there and hit a subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to all of you next week.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
Why, you old fool!
What?
I'm not your son, and my name's not Shine.
He calls me an old fool.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.